What is up, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Lovely Loners. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at this second generation Fractal from Larevo Knives. Now, if you guys aren't familiar, Larevo Knives is owned, operated, and entirely run by Jason Overall. He is a custom knife maker. For those of you who may be not as familiar with the channel, I do own a Larevo knife. This is my mini Tribeca, and if you've seen the video on that knife, you know that I am a big fan of Jason's work. So the way that this knife ended up on the table today is that this is Jason's personal knife. He was working on this piece for a customer, and he made an error with the bolster. He was able to fix the error, but it wasn't... he didn't want to let it leave the shop because there had been an error made. So that definitely speaks to him as a maker. He, didn't want to obviously waste the knife because it's lots of expensive materials. It's a very nice piece. But he fixed the error and then decided to keep the knife for himself while developing a new knife for the customer. Obviously a very respectable thing to do and resulted in a great personal EDC, which is super sweet. So when Jason had seen the Tribeca video, he was like, hey, maybe I'll get one of my personal knives out to you as well so you can take a look at a different model. And this is what he sent along. So he is on his second generation of knives. He's done some updates to his models for 2017 post Blade Show, and this is Gen 2 Fractal. So you can see here we do have some beautiful softened marble carbon fiber, some what I believe is black Timascus. It might just be regular Timascus in super high heat, but I believe it's black Timascus. We have a zirconium pivot collar, Stephen Kelly hardware, two-tone anodization, and a beautiful Sanmai blade, Sanmai back bar, and Sanmai clip. So that's going to be super cool. Let's go ahead and jump into it. The first thing that I want to do is show you guys the weight of this knife. Now, this is something that this is a topic that I kind of want to get into, and it's all going to start with you seeing how much this knife weighs. So we're at 7 ounces, guys. 7 freaking ounces. Let's actually go. I didn't have this scale when I did the mini Tribeca. Let's see how a smaller model stacks up. 6.8. So you can see here the difference in size not making that much a difference. We do have full steel back bars, very thick materials, full titanium liners that are not milled, and so that results in some super heavy knives. Now, I want to stop and take a moment and address this fact. So obviously when you get into the world of customs, there's kind of some gray areas, right? We obviously have sort of tactical folder customs, and that's going to be, your everyday Andre Thorburn, something like that, something even like a Shirogorov. Well, even a Shiro's obviously not a custom unless you get a custom division one, but these are kind of like tactical folders. The idea is that they're fancy, but they're still super usable and whatever. They're great. Then you obviously have art knives. Art knives, I don't own any. That's kind of not my jurisdiction. But the kind of purpose behind an art knife is exclusively to look good, right? There are certainly art knife makers out there that say like, oh, I make my knives to be used, and they're probably not lying, and you probably can use those knives, but the fact is the people spending $6,000 on one probably aren't. So that's totally fair. Art knives are kind of their own world, and a lot of us just kind of let that happen and do its thing. Now, me personally, and again, this is my personal perspective, please take this with a grain of salt. The knife world is very, very large, and there's a lot happening, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But for me, there's kind of this middle ground that I call fatty customs, and that's what Larevos are. Some other makers that come to mind when I speak about these are Kirby Lambert, Chad Nell, I can't really think of any other honestly, Todd Begg, right? These are knives that are super thick, usually pretty big, usually pretty high end in terms of materials and stuff like that, and usually not the lightest knives either. Now, I refer to them as fatty customs because they're usually like super thick and big and heavy. Now, what I think is special about these knives and the niche that I think they fill versus like a tactical folder is, gosh, this is really tough because like this would honestly be considered a tactical folder too if it was, at a knife show and being judged or whatever. But for me, what makes Fatty Custom special is that it is not that they are super practical knives. It is that they very well fit the personality type of how I deal with my knives, which is a fondler's delight, as we'll call it. So the feeling in the hand, the contouring, the ergonomics, the action, the materials on these knives are really geared towards fondlers. Now, I don't for a second want you guys to think that I'm trying to say that this knife can't be used or that this knife cannot be EDC'd, because that would be frankly wrong, and I do carry an EDC this knife. It's already got some dings and scratches in the zirconium, and that's perfectly fine, and I carry this knife. I love this knife. It's great. But if I was to walk up to somebody who is maybe not super into the world of customs, you know, they own a couple zero tolerance knives, they own a couple Spydercos, maybe they have branched out and they own like a South African custom or a Shirogorov or something like that. If I handed one of these to them, the first thing they would do is go like this, whoa, right? 7 ounces on a knife. Crazy, crazy, crazy. And that is the point that I'm making when I say that these aren't the most practical knives. They can be EDC'd. They are frankly designed to be EDC'd, and many, many, many people do EDC them. But compared to what else is in the market, they are not the most practical knives for EDC. The trade-off for that lowered level of practicality is how awesome they are to just hold, behold, and flip and play with. So the thing about these Fatty Customs is that they fill the hand amazingly. Just gripping this knife feels sensual, honestly. Like it just, your hand cups around it perfectly. All of the edges are beautifully contoured. If you go back to my video on the mini Tribeca, I think I used the word contouring like 1,010,000 times. So much so that I actually put the word contouring in my banner on my channel because of this video. Contouring on this knife is beyond that of any knife that's not this style of knife that I've ever tried. They fill the hand so well, and you just feel like you're holding something that was meant to be held. It just fits so well. You can choke up in the finger choil. Everything is comfortable. Everything is smoothed out. Everything fills the hand super well. It just feels perfect. It feels like it was just made for you. It was just made to be admired and handled and shared and loved, and I love that. So I really wanted to kind of get that out of the way because again, at 7 ounces, not super practical. I know a lot of people look at these knives and they say like it's too big, it's too thick, it's too heavy, why would I ever want to carry that? It's for, in my opinion, personally, for just kind of a different type of knife person. Somebody that is more interested in the craftsmanship and the, just being able to sit at the desk and hold it and play with it and admire it. That's really where these come down to. So I find myself transitioning into the world of Fatty Customs. Kirby Lambert is like #1 on my list right now. Larevo is right at the top as well. And Chad Nell, frankly, has a couple of full-time Ascus folders that I've been eyeballing for quite a long time. So they do feel kind of a different niche, and they are not for everyone, but boy, they are sure worth it, and they are very much special in their own right. Okay, so with that all out of the way, I'm going to try to zip through the rest of this, because when you're talking about something like this that's been fully handmade, it's hard to get into too many details and still kind of remain fair compared to what else is out there in the knife world. So one thing is that this knife has an absolutely delightful action. It is in part somewhat assisted by the heavy blade. The blade does have a somewhat thick stock, not crazy, but somewhat thick, and the overall blade shape is not particularly small, or just the overall blade size is not particularly small. Yet it remains incredibly smooth on the close, and it's really noticeably satisfying. The sound that you get on deployment is fantastic, and then on the close, it absolutely drops shut under its own weight, just as I would expect from a Thorburn or a Shirogorov or something of that nature. If you guys can remember from the Tribeca video, or if you actually saw my video on the Larevo Knives booth from Blade Show, he had a full-size Tribeca, Jason did, that closed like a Rask. It actually closes against gravity. It was amazing. It blew my mind. So Jason definitely knows what he's doing when it comes to actions, and this one is no exception. And then as far as a deployment goes, like I said, it does make a really great sound. It's not quite legendary like some of the South African makers like Thorburn, but it is pleasant. And then with Jason's flipper tabs, they don't lend themselves super well to the light switch method. If you just really fat finger it and kind of drag down the spine, it's not the greatest, but they work extremely well for push button. You do have jimping all the way down, and you have proper angle. So if I just push button this thing, you can see it rockets out like lightning. It's incredible. I just really like Jason's flipper tabs. They are a little bit chunky, a little bit thick, but they are nice to touch. The jimping is good enough to give you grip, but not so sharp that it really kind of drags away at your finger. This one is a little bit sharper just because of the deeper etch, but this one feels really good. And like I said, if you push button that thing, or kind of half light switch it, right? Like light switching doesn't not work. It's just if you kind of fat finger light switch it, that's kind of an issue on a lot of knives. This particular knife has a little bit of lock stick on super humid days. I found that it really depends on the day. We've had a lot of humidity here in Virginia lately, and some days I flip this all day long at my desk, and I have just this tiny bit of lock stick, and then other days I flip it all day at my desk, and it's consistently no lock stick. And that has been 100% on par with whether or not it was super humid that day. So this knife is affected a little bit from humidity. It just needs to be dialed in a little bit better from that perspective, but overall, pretty great. So that's pretty much it, guys. I just wanted to give you a quick view of this knife. It's beautiful. It's amazing. I absolutely love it. It's got a fantastic action, incredible materials. And then I just wanted to take kind of a moment to I really wanted to take time to kind of explain this world of knives and this side of knives. And then I also wanted to tell you guys for a moment that I have initiated a build on Jason's books. I'm very, very pumped about that. I'm going to do a full-size Tribeca to give this one a big brother knife. And so I'll have kind of a matching pair of Tribecas. And I really went all out on the materials with all kinds of crazy stuff. I don't want to spoil too much of it. But I did ask Jason, I said, hey man, to cut down some of that weight, maybe you want to try some internal milling. He said that he had been considering that lately, and that it appears he's going to use my knife as the guinea pig. So while this will still be a fatty custom and still be pretty heavy, maybe we can knock that 7 ounces down to 6.25 or 6.5 with some internal milling. And honestly, the only reason that I would want to adjust the weight at all, because quite frankly, the heavy weight really lends itself to that overall premium feel that you have something really special. For me, it's just that they weigh down the pocket quite a bit. And so if you're wearing looser pants, you don't have a belt on, sometimes this will drag the right side of your pants down a little bit. Nothing too crazy, but it was something that I asked, and I'm glad that he is considering it. So I do have that build in the works. I'm super stoked. Thank you so much, Jason, for sending this knife along. I really appreciate it. If you guys would like to see some beautiful pictures and videos up close of this knife, you can do so by following me on Instagram at tovarishworks. If you would like to be Jason, or be like Jason or anybody else and send me along a lovely loner, you can do so by emailing me at tovarishworks@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.